Havenwood, Maine, a town cradled in the heart of whispering pines, where the trees seem to hold secrets in their rustling leaves, and the air is thick with the scent of nature's breath. Shrouded in mist and secrets, the forest stands as a silent guardian, its tall pines reaching towards the sky, cloaked in an ethereal fog that rolls through the dense underbrush. The air, thick with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, held a silence that was more presence than absence. It was a silence that seemed to listen, to watch, to wait. This silence pressed against the old Victorian house on the hill, the house that the Harringtons called home. The house stood like a sentinel, its windows like eyes peering into the soul of the forest. Daniel, a weathered man with kind eyes, sought solace in woodworking. His sanctuary was the barn where shavings danced in the pale light, and the scent of fresh-cut wood mingled with the pine-scented air. His wife, Eleanor, a woman of quiet strength, found peace in her garden. She coaxed life from the earth, her hands tenderly nurturing each plant, each flower, as if they were her own children. Together they had built a life of quiet contentment, a life filled with simple joys and the steady rhythm of the seasons. It was a life soon to be touched by the extraordinary, a life on the brink of change. One chilly autumn evening, a knock echoed through the house, as startling as a raven's cry in the stillness. It was a sound that seemed to come from another world, a world just beyond the veil of the ordinary. On their doorstep stood a small figure, bundled in an oversized coat. Her face was pale, framed by dark, haunted eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 untold stories. This was Lily, an orphan, they were told. Her past was a mystery as deep and silent as the pines themselves, a past that seemed to whisper in the rustling leaves and the sighing wind. With hesitant smiles, Daniel and Eleanor welcomed her into their home. They were unaware that they were inviting in something far beyond their understanding, something that would change their lives forever. Lily, small and silent, seemed to disappear into the house, a wraith swallowed by the shadows. Her presence was like a whisper, a faint echo in the vast silence of the old house. Her silence, they initially thought, was the weight of her past, a burden she carried in her large, watchful eyes, eyes that seemed to see beyond the present into a realm of shadows and whispers. Little did they know, her silence ran deeper. It was a silence born of a world they could not see, a world that whispered to her from the shadows of their ancient house, a world that was about to reveal itself in ways they could never have imagined. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to unfold. It started with the old dusty books in the library, their pages turning on their own, as if guided by an unseen hand. Candles flickered in the dead of night, casting dancing shadows on the walls, shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. The old clock in the hallway, silent for years, began to tick once more, its hands moving in a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the house itself. And through it all, Lily remained silent, her eyes ever watchful, ever distant. She would stand at the window, gazing out into the misty forest, as if searching for something or someone just beyond the reach of sight. Daniel and Eleanor, concerned but unsure, whispered to each other in the quiet of the night, their voices filled with worry and wonder. What had they brought into their home? What secrets did this child hold? Yet amidst the strangeness, there were moments of unexpected warmth, a faint smile from Lily, a glimmer of hope in her haunted eyes, a fleeting sense of connection that hinted at a deeper bond forming. As the days turned into weeks, the Harringtons found themselves drawn into Lily's world, a world where the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwined, where the whispering pines of Havenwood held the key to a mystery that was only just beginning to unfold. Days turned into weeks, the silence of the pines seeping into the house, wrapping around them like an unseen fog. The forest, with its towering pines and ever-present mist, seemed to breathe a life of its own, whispering secrets that only the wind could carry. The house, nestled at the edge of this enigmatic woodland, became a vessel for the silence, absorbing the eerie tranquility that surrounded it. Lily remained a mystery, her silences punctuated by strange, whispered conversations, her words directed at the empty spaces in the room. She would sit for hours, her lips moving in hushed tones, as if engaged in deep dialogue with invisible companions. The shadows in the room seemed to dance to her whispers, creating an unsettling symphony of light and dark. At first, Daniel and Eleanor dismissed it as a child's imagination, the echoes of loneliness finding voice in the quiet house. They believed it was a phase, a fleeting moment in their daughter's young life. They watched her play alone, her small figure moving through the dimly lit rooms, her laughter echoing off the walls, a stark contrast to the silence that often enveloped her. But there was something unsettling about the intensity in her eyes, the way she would turn her head, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Her gaze would fixate on a point in the distance, her eyes wide and unblinking, as if she were peering into another world, a world unseen by others. The intensity of her focus was unnerving, a silent testament to the mysteries that lay within her young mind. One afternoon, Eleanor discovered Lily in the attic, bathed in the dusty rays of the setting sun. The attic, a place of forgotten memories and old, dusty relics, had become a sanctuary for Lily. She was drawn to its quiet solitude, the way the light filtered through the small window, casting long shadows that seemed to dance around her. She was hunched over a sheet of paper, her brow furrowed in concentration, her hand moving with a frantic energy that belied her usual stillness. The intensity of her focus was palpable, her small hand moving with a speed and precision that seemed almost otherworldly. Each stroke of her pencil was deliberate, each line a part of a larger, incomprehensible whole. The paper was filled with strange symbols, swirling lines that seemed to writhe and twist, like living things trapped on the page. The symbols were unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen, their intricate patterns and dark lines creating a sense of unease. They seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if they were trying to communicate something beyond the realm of human understanding. When asked what they were, Lily simply looked up, her eyes wide and unseeing, and whispered, "They want to be heard." Her voice was soft, almost a breath, but the words carried a weight that sent a chill down Eleanor's spine. It was as if Lily was a conduit, a vessel through which these unseen entities could communicate. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at Eleanor's heart. The realization that her daughter might be in touch with something beyond their understanding was terrifying. The fear was not just for Lily, but for the unknown forces that seemed to be encroaching on their lives, forces that were invisible yet palpable. These were not the drawings of a child. They were too complex, too dark, filled with an energy that seemed to defy Lily's young age. The symbols and lines spoke of ancient knowledge, of secrets buried deep within the fabric of time. There was an ancient quality to them, a darkness that seemed to emanate from the page itself. The symbols seemed to whisper of forgotten times, of ancient rituals and lost civilizations. They were a bridge to a past that was both fascinating and terrifying, a past that seemed to be reaching out to the present through Lily's hand. What was Lily channeling in their quiet home? The question gnawed at Eleanor, a constant presence in her mind. Was it the house with its history and secrets that was influencing Lily? Or was it something from the forest, something ancient and powerful that had found a way into their lives through their daughter? And who were these unseen entities who wished to be heard? The thought of invisible beings, watching and waiting, filled Eleanor with a sense of dread. Were they benevolent, or did they harbour darker intentions? The uncertainty was maddening, a constant source of anxiety and fear. The unease settled over the house, a chilling premonition in the stillness. The once warm and inviting home had become a place of shadows and whispers, a place where the line between reality and the unseen world seemed to blur. The silence was no longer comforting. It was a harbinger of something unknown, something that lay just beyond the veil of the ordinary. The arrival of winter brought with it not just a blanket of snow, but a deepening sense of unease. The cold seemed to seep into the very bones of the house, making the air thick with an almost tangible tension. The once cozy corners now felt like they were hiding secrets, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, darker, as if they were alive. The whispers in the house grew stronger, more insistent, and Lily, once withdrawn, became increasingly agitated. It was as if the house itself was speaking to her, its voice growing louder with each passing day. The whispers were no longer just background noise. They were a constant, unsettling presence that seemed to follow her everywhere. She would often be found staring into the dark recesses of the house, her eyes wide and fearful, her small body trembling. It was as if she could see things that others couldn't, as if the darkness held secrets that were meant only for her. Her parents watched helplessly, their concern growing with each passing day. One evening, during dinner, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "They're angry. They say this is their home." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous, sending a chill down the spines of everyone at the table. It was the first time she had spoken about the whispers, and the fear in her voice was unmistakable. Daniel and Eleanor, their concern now a palpable presence at the dinner table, tried to reassure her, but their words felt hollow even to them. They exchanged worried glances, each silently acknowledging the growing dread that had taken root in their hearts. They wanted to believe that it was all just a child's imagination, but deep down they knew better. The history of their town, a history whispered in hushed tones and avoided glances, came back to haunt them. Havenwood was a place where the past was never truly forgotten, where old stories lingered like ghosts, and where the line between history and legend was often blurred. The townspeople spoke of strange occurrences, of things that couldn't be explained, and of a darkness that seemed to hang over the town like a shroud. Havenwood was a town built on secrets, on whispers of children who had vanished without a trace, their disappearances shrouded in mystery and blamed on the unforgiving wilderness. The forest that surrounded the town was a place of fear and fascination, a place where people went in but didn't always come out. The stories of the missing children were passed down from generation to generation, each one more chilling than the last. But what if the wilderness held secrets darker than anyone dared to imagine? What if the forest was not just a place of natural danger, but a gateway to something far more sinister? The thought was almost too terrifying to contemplate, but it was a thought that Daniel couldn't shake. The more he learned, the more he realized that the truth was far more horrifying than any legend. Driven by a growing sense of dread, Daniel began to research the history of their house, delving into the town archives, seeking answers in the brittle pages of forgotten records. He spent countless hours poring over old documents, each discovery adding to his unease. The house had a history, a dark and troubling history that seemed to be repeating itself. He discovered a chilling pattern, a cycle of disappearances that stretched back centuries, each vanishing child linked to their house, their very home. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The house was not just a home, it was a trap, a place where children were taken and never seen again. The more he uncovered, the more he felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. The truth, he realized with a cold certainty, was far more terrifying than the stories they told themselves to keep the darkness at bay. The house was a conduit, a vessel for something ancient and malevolent, something that had been waiting, watching and taking for centuries. The realization left him shaken, but he knew he had to protect his family, no matter the cost. Their home was not just a house, it was a vessel, a conduit to something ancient and malevolent. The walls seemed to whisper, the shadows seemed to move, and the very air seemed to hum with a dark energy. Daniel knew that they couldn't stay, that they had to leave before it was too late. But the house had other plans, and it wasn't going to let them go without a fight.